So today's rebuild is a 2015 GMC Terrain Denali. This is the one from our tutorial videos. If you want to see these videos in depth, you can check those out. I'll put a link in the description. But this is an overview of the entire job. What seemed to be a pretty simple job, to do it properly, turns out to be quite a big one. So let's get started and see what it takes to do this job right. So we'll pull the hood off first, pull the headlights out, start disconnecting the battery and realize that we got ahead of ourselves. We need to pull the seats out first. Do this while we still have power. So we'll unbolt them. Now you can finish taking the battery out, disconnecting all the wiring harnesses. Pull the air box out. Put it up in the air. Let me start pulling the exhaust off. Pull the reinforcement off. Then we got some more electrical wires. The junction box, fuse box is up there. Disconnect our heater hoses and AC lines. Disconnect our engine mounts, our trans mount. Now we set the engine, subframe, everything down on a cart, and unbolt the subframe and lift the truck off. Little by little, make sure we got everything. Now we gotta take the fuel and brake lines off. They're gonna be on our way. We'll leave them together with the master cylinder and the ABS unit. Now we're done on the lift. We can pull this driver's door off just to give us some room. Pull the seats out. Now pull the console out. And start disconnecting the dash. Got a crate full of parts. Maybe they'll make it back in. Pull the A-pillar trim down so we can get the dash out. And start unbolting the dash. Until the afternoon crew finally shows up, they give me a hand. There they are. So now the heavy lifting can be done. Throw the door back on. We'll need it on there to make sure everything lines up. So now from the other videos, we're going to pull this for no reason. I could have just cut all this stuff off. I'm going to anyway. This is high strength steel, so it can't be sectioned. I go into that in depth in the other videos, but it gave me a chance to show you some pulls. So now we're going to do it the right way. We're just going to cut everything off. We'll drill out our spot welds, grind out the others. Break them all loose. Get our favorite tool out. Trim some of these pieces off. Some more grinding. More drilling. Now the sawzall comes out. Take the little scrap off. And now there's this panel behind the wheel. We need to get this off so we can get to our frame rail. And we'll drill the frame rail off. Knock that panel loose. Ended up drilling a lot of the welds from the inside. That's why we take the dash out. 1, so we can get to those welds, and 2, so we don't have a fire. case you were wondering, GMC Terrains are quite flammable. Don't ask me how I know. So now that piece is off, we can get to our frame rail. Start getting all our spot welds out. And the rail comes off. Now onto the driver's side. Take that panel off behind the wheel so we can get to all the frame rail welds, and take the frame rail off. Now we're going to clean up all of our welds, get our new piece ready to go up there, grind off all the paint. We'll do the pieces and the car itself. We don't want any contaminants in our welds. Once we got them all cleaned up, make sure everything's flat. And then we'll put a coating of weld through primer on everything. Now we're going to put our measuring system up so I know where these things go and don't have to guess. So we'll slide them into place, put a couple clamps on there. And then we'll use a measuring system to make sure they're right where they belong. Clamp them all up. Put our reinforcement on. Put our upper tie bar on. Measure everything out, make sure it all fits. And a little fine tuning. And measure it all up. If it all looks good, we can weld it up. And it does. We'll start tacking everything up, make sure it doesn't move on us. We'll keep checking as we go. We don't want it to move and then weld it in the wrong place, and then find out when we try to put the parts on. And a lot more welding. I put these pieces on, basically just 2 pieces. They're actually made up of about 10 each. But there's no reason to take all the other welds apart, so I just left them together and stuck them up there. The only body panels we're going to replace are the hood and the front bumper, and one headlight. This was the majority of the work right here. So now we're going to weld our welds from the inside. Since our dash is out of the way, makes it nice and easy to get in there. Now that everything's primed, we can seam seal it and hand it off to the painting gnomes. The painting gnomes are done with their job, so now I got it back. The end of the radiator was broken, so we're going to change that, as well as a cooling fan assembly. The fans themselves were good, it was just the housing. So we're going to switch over the motors and the blades, put it all back together. It was cheaper just to buy the one piece than it is to buy the assembly. So we'll put our fans on our radiator, put our condenser on. Then we can put it all in the subframe. Bolt it all in there. Hook up our lines, our baffle on. Now we can start putting our engine mounts in, our brackets, upper tie bar, all the little pieces that go on the front end. And onto the dash. Pull this driver's door off, give us some room. Put our wiring harness back up. Took all that out of the way so that the painting gnomes could get in there. They're small, but they need a lot of room. The afternoon crew is back. Give me a hand with this dash. Bolt it all up. Can run all our duct work, put our carpet back up. Put the bracket in for the bottom of the dash. Hook up our steering shaft. Those are always fun. And put our glove box in, put our vents in. And put the console back in. This guy left the lid up blocking the camera. Can't see anything. So now we'll put our close-out panels underneath. We'll put our seats back in without vacuuming the carpet. Sorry, clean freaks. Put our A-pillar trims back up. And now we can put our fuel and brake lines back on. Put our AC lines back in. The afternoon crew doing afternoon crew things, standing around their phones, talking. Now we're ready to put the engine in. Let it down slow. Helps when you got a couple people line up each side. Get it into position. And bolt it up to the body. Hopefully it doesn't fall on me. Now put the exhaust up. And send the afternoon crew home. I hook up all the brake lines. Put our suspension back together. Our steering shaft. And start putting everything back together under the hood. Run the wiring harness across the front. Hook up all of our lines. Washer bottle. Run all the electrical wires. Put the electrical box in. Put the air box in. The battery in and the ECM. Put the engine cover on. Put our air baffle on. We can throw our tires back on. One of the afternoon crew came back so we could bleed the brakes the old-fashioned way. We'll put the drive shaft up. I actually had the drive shaft out so that I could tow it. The back wheels were on the ground and I didn't feel like putting a trans in for no reason. So now we're going to put the hood back on. It's our used hood. Put the fender on. Line it all up. Put the other fender on. Line it up. There's a little body work to do on the fender and the driver's side. We'll turn that over to the bodywork gnomes. And then they'll give it to the painting gnomes. Fill up the AC and antifreeze. And now it's back from the painting gnomes, so we can undercoat it and put our rust proofing in all of our repaired areas. And put it back together. Put the headlights in. Put the bumper on. Now everyone's favorite fender liners. Throw our wheels back on. Now it's got to go for its safety test, so we're going to do some mechanical work. Rear shocks were kind of tired, so we're going to swap those out. You have to pull the wheel liner down to get to the bolts. I'll change that out. Now we'll do the brakes. They were rusty from sitting. So we'll throw some new pads and rotors on it. Changed oil, and it's all set. So all the framework was done on a 4-day holiday weekend, so I had plenty of time to work at my leisure. The timestamp on the video was off by a day or so, but the time was correct. So that gives you an idea how long it took me. I had all the parts already cut off, so it was basically just pulling it apart, changing those frame rails, throwing it back together. Now the painting gnomes did show up and edge it out for me so that I could put it back together, which made the process go a little bit quicker. After it was back on its wheels and running and driving again, the bodywork and paint gnomes came back later, and they got their stuff done so that I could totally put it back together the following weekend. About 10 days start to finish. Now it was my car, so I wasn't in a huge hurry for it, so I was able to take my time. Now for the hard pill to swallow for some people. A properly repaired total loss can be just as good as before the accident. I personally drove this for the last 2 years. It did nothing but oil changes. Actually, I even made the afternoon crew do a few of those. Okay, so that pill wasn't too hard to swallow. We'll try a little harder one. How about you can make money rebuilding cars? Now, I had this thing for 2 years, put a few miles on it, sold it, and still made quite a bit of money. So you can make money rebuilding cars if you have some patience. Now to give you an idea of how much I made, I can't even buy these things with similar miles, similar options, wrecked. For what I paid for this thing, completely done. How did I sell it? One of my previous customers needed a car for their daughter, called me up, asked me if I had anything, came out, looked at it, and bought it. Now I was a little busy, I wasn't planning on selling it, so I had to throw some tires on it, clean it up, and change the oil again. So I was a little busy, that's why we didn't get a Mustang video this week. On top of this, I also sold a few other cars. If you follow me on Instagram, you can see some of them. Since we're dealing out the hard pills to swallow, here's another one. A lot of people do say I put way too much effort into these repairs, that I could sell it without doing so much work. Part of the reason I do that is because I don't advertise, and I still sell cars faster than most dealerships. And that's because I have a huge referral base. That's exactly how I sold this one. So even though I spent a little extra time on the last car I sold them, they've recommended me to friends of theirs and bought a second car. They like this one so much, I'm already looking for a third one for them. I guess it does pay to do things the right way. Besides, it helps me sleep at night. I hope this video gave you an idea of the entire process that was involved in this job, and a little bit of a warning. Even though it didn't look bad, no airbags were off, it turns out to be quite a big job. Just be careful when you're out there bidding on your own projects, and make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. So like this video if you found it interesting, share it if you think somebody else might. Subscribe to see what's coming up in the future. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. On a side note, these Terrains are no good at donuts, even when you turn the traction control off. It still tries to engage after you reach a certain speed. Really not fun. What the heck, GM? Why did you give me a disable button if it doesn't work?